political undertones. So there are serious political
Master, if you want us to unmask it, that's why I said I wish there was time. Because there are political forces in South Africa. I just told you from the MK party, and the basis on which they are coming is to create maximum discontent and maybe some degree of uprising for the Cyril Ramaphosa government.
And their base is within the Zulus.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you. So if you look at the last election, I produced the last election in South Africa, where the basis of the MK party was support from Zulus and others, and they got that going. They tried to create the impression that this enclave is a bastion of support for only a particular distance, and that is a dangerous development. So I think that some political forces that stand to gain by creating instability in South Africa, in the hope that once that instability comes, it will inure to their political benefit, they must stir this trouble. It's not tantamount to the entire South African polity. I don't think so, and I honestly don't think that President Ramaphosa, progressive as he will be, will support this retrograde action by these miscreants.
Why are they not dealing with
it? So that's what I'm saying, that I think that they have to up their game. They have made statement. I have heard President Ramaphosa speak and condemn. He has condemned this xenophobic acts in South Africa. So beyond condemnation, I think he ought to take a harder stance. Sometimes maybe people think they may use persuasive means as a first thing in government to try and persuade people from engaging in those destabilizing acts. But if it fails, I believe that they must crack the whip and ensure they deploy enough coercive forces to stop the miscreants from doing what they are doing. Because apart from violating the fundamental human rights, this our African descent that we are talking project of unity is being threatened. It is being threatened, and I think that this thing should not be allowed to watch. There are African patriots. If you know Julius Malema, Julius Malema has even been advocating that we should break down. And you know Julius Malema is the leader of the economic freedom fighters in South Africa. They are even advocating that even the barriers in South Africa preventing some other things should all be broken down, so that we have free movement, residents and other things of African people across the continent. That is the answer. Because for me, look at Europe, David. Look at Germany, France, Britain, okay? Individually, not only were they the colonial masters, but individually they had more powerful economies and others than us. Not so. Yeah. They are integrating. France doesn't feel safe enough today, living just as France. So they go into alliance with Germany and others to form an EU where they are impregnable. I just told you, Audishak, not long ago, we went to Switzerland for a conference, and also in France. Look, when we were leaving Switzerland to enter France, we did not even notice it. We just went under a bridge, and there were some 5 or 6 policemen there, and they said that we are now leaving France and entering Switzerland. You see trade, trucks, everybody passing by. Why would there not be greater prosperity in those areas than where you spend time fighting one another? The same African people, under the guise of protecting a border. Where did that border come from? The border that you are so zealously protecting is a colonial relic. It was drawn by a colonial master. They sat somewhere and decided how they would divide Africa. And sometimes in drawing the line, it went through even compounds. One compound, one people, one family, it divided them into 2. And you say that in this day and age, this is what we should spend time protecting in Africa, when everybody else is coalescing and Africa is balkanizing. Please, for God's sake, let's find a way to deal. This is a very emotional issue for many of us. If you share the Pan-African belief that the African is not inferior, the African is as capable as any other person on the face of this earth, and given that Allah Almighty has given us all these resources and made us the richest continent, why should poverty be the bane, should be the preoccupation of most of our people? So I think that it's a subtle attempt. Right. Those who are fanning the flames of xenophobia and others in South Africa are just people who want to keep the status quo and make sure that Africa never gets together for a fairer and more equitable distribution of our resources, for a better life for our people. Right. I think that for me is the answer. So I believe that President Cyril Ramaphosa must crack the whip and deal with the miscreants who are this, and to send a signal that South Africa, who are not only beneficiaries of the generosity of their brothers and sisters across the African continent, are very welcome to South Africa, to live in Africa, South Africa, just as any South African is welcome to live in any part of Africa. That is the signal we must be sending. And so I pray that we don't escalate. Let's hold our horses now. Let the sane minds prevail. Let the matured minds take over. Let the committed Pan-Africanists take the action that we need, so that Africa will be better off from these xenophobic acts.
Okay. All right. So there are a few comments here. Nana Oheneba says he's watching us from Alexandria in the United States. Seidu Iseka says, Honorable Lebi, I disagree with you. The government didn't take any action against the protesters. They took the matter into their own hands. South Africa has a law to enforce. Why are they beating black Africans? So obviously it says the government didn't take any actions against the protesters, and that's the basis for why he disagrees with you. Let's take our attention to our next topic. We'll take a look at health. Because yesterday, the committee that was set up to investigate the cause of death of Charles Emisa presented their report to the Minister of Health yesterday, and some recommendations are being put across. Certain medical staff has been fingered, and disciplinary action has been called against them. But the question is, how does we go beyond this, right? Just the disciplinary action, and what happens next? Are we able to put or nip the issue of no bed syndrome in the bud and make sure that at the back of the gentleman's death, that unfortunate incident will never happen in Ghana here again? But the committee made certain recommendations, and has called out certain medical staff. Key amongst the recommendations, I just want to get them across, says we should expedite action on the establishment of a national electronic emergency bed management system. Steps to fully integrate the Ghana Armed Forces critical care and emergency hospitals into national emergency care system. Ensure compulsory triaging of all patients in states of emergency. And then a national emergency care fund, right? Obviously, people have talked about this earlier on, the setup of a national emergency care fund to deal with issues of, medical emergencies. What this means is that for the first 24 hours that you are rushing to any medical facility, whether private or public, and it's an emergency, the first 24 hours, if the fund is set up, the fund will deal with the medical expenses. Ishak, let me come to you. I don't know whether you've made meanings into the recommendations that were made. And unfortunately, this morning I was saying, all the staff that are involved are women. And it's unfortunate for me, because our mothers to be very compassionate and very accommodating. Here we are in a certain bracket. All those who have been accused are women. It's very unfortunate, and it hurts me as a person.
Well, it's quite disheartening to have learned of this unfortunate tragedy that happened to the late Mr. Emisa. But I wasn't surprised, because many times I have been privy to the unprofessionalism of our Ghanaian health workers. Some. Of course, I mean some, not all of them. But I shudder when people decide to, as it were, doubt their competence. But the Ghanaian health worker is not incompetent in any way. But these are the same workers who day in, day out are being shipped out to other jurisdictions where they go and they don't exhibit their unprofessionalism. Because in those jurisdictions, they are looking out for people who are very professional and you have the competent skills. Because in fact, if you don't have the skills, I'm not sure that anybody will want to engage you. And even in the country itself, when you visit a private facility and meet the same health professional, and you go to meet him or her in a public facility, he or she is a different person altogether. So that speaks to the environment in which they operate. So this is not something about their competence. It's just about attitude. And like I said from the onset, as disheartening as it is, I am not surprised that this particular committee has come out with these recommendations. Like you said, these recommendations are not anything novel. They are not novel. But we are all human beings. And we know how we should treat each other. Right? And the common saying that do unto yourself as you want others to do unto you is a doctrine that must apply to our everyday life. But this young man that died, he's somebody's father, right? Somebody's son, somebody's friend, somebody's uncle, somebody's husband, and all of that. All the people involved, they have relations as that. They have husbands, they have brothers, they have uncles, and all of that. Imagine that it were one of those relations of yours. And let me use myself as an example. When I had this my condition, I remember the date. I think this was on the 29th of May last year. My younger sister is a nurse. She's a nurse. She's the one who follows me directly. And she's married to a medical doctor. Now, when I got to the hospital, this was at the time that the nurses were on strike. No, this was a day after the nurses had called off their strike last year, on the 29th of May. When she came to the hospital, but she stays far away from Accra, and she works somewhere. When she came to Accra, and she came to see me the following day, and she was talking with some of my relations and relatives who had come to see me. You know what she asked them? She said, hey, so imagine that I had come to the hospital the previous day when the nurses were on strike. See me in this condition. She's imagining what would have happened. That is because I'm the brother. Because she has seen other people's brothers during the time that nurses were on strike. She never felt that way. You understand? She never felt that way. But once it was her blood brother, she was now reimagining if my condition had happened at the time that nurses were on strike, what could have happened? So you need that compassion to be able to practice in a certain profession. It's basic. If you lack it, and so that's why the admonition by the chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health, I think that he's not despising the health workers, but sometimes when you look at how fragile human and precious human life is, and people have a certain mandate, a certain responsibility, we know that everything that happens in the Islamic faith, anything that happens, you will say that is divined by God. When somebody dies, this medical negligence people are talking about in the Islamic faith will tell you that, oh, the man was meant to die. God meant it that way. That's how we look at it. You understand? But we also believe that even if they had, as it were, exercised that mandate and done what they were supposed to do, and God meant for the man to die, the man would have still died, but they would have not been held responsible. And so if you sign on to a certain profession, you have that right to stay true to the profession. And for me, it's not about competence, it's not about anything. It's just an attitude of attitude and unprofessionalism on the part of the nurses and the other health workers. And I want to commend the committee for having painstakingly, as it were, investigated the matter and come out with these recommendations. Going forward, how do we implement these recommendations and ensure that they serve as a benchmark so that you and I or anybody else may not have to go through such an incident in future anymore? But we don't know who would be next. And that's not the first time that this thing is happening. Like Professor Ajimambadu Akosa himself said, there have been a lot of committee reports that are allowed to gather dust. So they don't expect this committee report to also gather dust. Right? And so we need a certain kind of comprehensive and holistic approach to dealing with issues of health. Because unlike other professions, health deals with life. Health deals with life, unlike other professions. You understand? And so it's a very critical profession that needs to be looked at in an entirely different manner, right from the process of recruitment into health training institutions and all of that, all the way to the top. Right? Like one of my brothers said this morning, you see, now people don't go into the profession because they have their passion for the profession. People are simply looking for an opportunity to feed. So whether they qualify by way of their attitude, some people know that even I don't have that care for humanity. I don't have that care for people. And you want to be a nurse. You cannot. You can't, because you need to look. When I got admitted into a hospital, right, for the few hours that I was admitted in my condition, I'm using myself as an example. I had to wee on myself, right? A grown-up man like me, and did other things. Somebody had to come and clean me up. Somebody who was not related to me, a nurse, taking care of a full grown-up man in that manner. And so if she came and she was treating me with any a discontent or whatever, I would not feel happy. So you need people who understand what the job entails, the profession entails, so that at the end of the day, they can have that passion to be able to exhibit the professional competence that they were trained and imbibed with. So I commend the committee. Let us follow through the recommendations of the committee so that they serve as a benchmark, so that we can have a truly professional health service delivery system in this country.
Right. Now, if you look at the report itself, it stays off mentioning the word no bed syndrome. So obviously, the argument that the gentleman died out of the fact that there was no bed at the facility, they stayed off it. What they said was that he died out of excessive loss of blood, and that he could have been saved and the death could have been avoided if the medical staff at the police hospital, Greater Accra Regional Hospital, Kolebu Teaching Hospital, and in the case, officials within the ambulance service, those who took him along, if they had administered or treated him, giving him some first aid of some sort, the gentleman would have survived.
With excessive bleeding.
At the back of all the explanation and recommendations, the Ghana Medical Association seems not to be happy. They think that the fingered staff are being used as scapegoats, to clear or deal with the inefficiencies in the system. I don't know what your observations are on this.
Well, David, I would have a very honest and unbiased stance in this matter. Taking over from what my fellow panelists intimated about the nature of some of our healthcare personnel and the attitude and how they conduct themselves in the field of work. Yes, we have an underlying problem. Apart from the systemic inefficiencies of our healthcare system, right? Taking into consideration the infrastructural gap, right? The deficit of healthcare personnel and the disproportionate ratio of patients to healthcare personnel, decoupling our whole entire healthcare infrastructure. I think that clearly we, as a country, ought to do more. Because what has happened today is not new. This news, as Audu said, is not new. We've been having this over and over again. Can you imagine, as far back as 2023, I don't know if now it has changed. The whole of the northern region did not have an MRI machine. So it meant that if you had an accident or any severe trauma to your head, you either be flown from the north to Accra, or you will put in an ambulance to Kumasi. Can you imagine? A country of a population of 36 million people. David, so these are systemic issues that we need. I think that, yes, the committee's recommendations are, I mean, theoretically they are good, but do we have the political will? Do we have the right people to ensure that we realize that? Why is it that we know that there is a population census every time, and that it is rational for our local governance system to enact what do you call it, programs and projects in place supported by the central government to build adequate healthcare facilities? We learnt of the Agenda 111. What has been the fate of that project? When a government promised us 111 hospitals. I'm sure that if this Agenda 111 hospitals were completed, this gentleman would not have been moved around, because as you clearly intimated, he suffered from what we call hypovolemic shock, which is something that can be saved. Right? A district hospital can just infuse blood and other electrolytes and then save him from such shock. So I think that there are systemic issues bedeviling our healthcare system. The conduct and the nature and the quality of our healthcare personnel is something that we need to watch closely. I mean, the regime of selecting who becomes a nurse and who becomes a doctor has to be stringent, because we also need to take into consideration the person's attitude and why you want to become a doctor. It's not because you are a science student or because you have wants and that you can meet the requirements, or you are knowledgeable to be able to memorize all what it takes, all the information to pass an exam. No, you should be compassionate. You should have the fear of humanity, like the love of humanity, the fear of God in your heart. That humanity first, that is all about care to people and not about money. And we've seen a lot of scandals across our various hospitals, especially that of Rich. You remember the Fourth Estate exposed a doctor who did a backdoor surgery on a patient and it didn't go well, and he extorted a lot of money from that patient. We are beginning to see nurses that are very rude. And you know, healthcare is not just about administering medication, but there's also a psychological aspect to it. Do you understand? The mental health of our patients also matter. And so if you are in a hospital trying to rehabilitate from a disease and nurses are not treating you well and are being rude to you, of course then it affects or delays the recovery period. Right? And so, David, I think that yes, there are systemic issues. The Ministry of Health knows very well what is happening within the healthcare landscape. We have issues of infrastructure deficits. Look, a hospital that is 100-bed capacity today is overburdened with 200 patients, technically. If you have 4 oxygen...
I'm not stopping, but that raises the question that people are now posing.
Yes.
And I acknowledge the fact the fact you are giving about the inefficiencies within the system.
Yeah.
No enough spaces.
Yeah.
But does that mean that when somebody walks into your facility, and that has been the argument, you know, these medical staff, they don't have the equipment to work with, they are overstretched, they are understaffed, and the reason. Does that give you the impunity, I'll use the word impunity, to let a patient pass through your hand and die? Well, because you look at the space and there's no bed, you look at the space and you can't bring the person in.
Well,
somebody comes in an ambulance and for 1 hour they was just being transported from one facility to the other.
Yeah.
Ends up dying, and you have the effrontery to explain that because there were no beds, because there were no spaces, because there was no medical doctor to treat him, you leave him to die.
Well, David, let's be fair and objective here. This question you asked me is a very sensitive question, and I have to trade carefully with the answer I'm going to give. Because, yes, it depends on what the patient presents with. the kind of condition the patient presents with.
Here we're talking about emergency.
Emergency, yes, but emergency, we have various degrees of emergency, right? I mean, you can have a hospital that has one operating theater and is overpopulated with patients. The operation theater is occupied by a patient, and then you bring another patient coming in from the ambulance. Of course, you cannot do away with that patient currently seeking medical attention and put that person there.
You need to triage.
You need to, even if you triage and the person needs immediate surgery, how are you going to conduct that?
But the first thing that you triage. In these instances, they don't. You are sent away.
No, but my point is that you are speaking as if, well, if that is the case and people are brought to the hospital, even if it's overpopulated, they still need to
why not
take care of them. I mean, that's
and
why
I love
said
the explainer was given by the health minister. That even if it requires that you treat the person on the floor to save the person's life.
That is why I said that it depends on the emergency, the medical emergency, the degree. Every medical emergency is approached with different technicalities. So that's why I said that it depends. If somebody has come with a broken limb, of course, that one you can treat the person on the floor. You can't send the person away. But if somebody comes with, I mean, severe degrees of burns, right, or, I mean, very severe shock, then the way you would treat that patient is quite different.
Yeah, so in this instance, you triage. If it has to be referral, you do the referral.
Yes, but even if you refer, let us be honest here, as Ghanaians, what is the state of Kolebu today? What is the state of Rich Hospital today?
So how come that?
What is the state of
how
TTH?
Come that when you are transferred from, let's say, 37,
yes,
right, and you are to go to Kolebu, right, or you are denied access at one of the facilities, and you know somebody big in town,
yes,
the moment you place a call, you will be sorted out within the next 5 minutes.
That is part of the inefficiencies that I'm talking about.
Well,
David, that is part of the inefficiencies that I'm talking about. And we ought to admit all these flaws in our healthcare system. I'm not here to do politics, MPP, NDC, whatever. All of them have failed in this regard, with all sincerity. We have failed to have a national health developmental plan, taking into consideration the growth of our population and the kind of challenges that we have and the healthcare infrastructure needs of every region. If we had a national healthcare developmental plan and we stuck to it since the ages or the inception of our Fourth Republic till date, we will not be talking about this issue. Elsewhere, and I can compare our system to that of Australia, our population is almost, I mean, more than that of Australia. But in Australia, their healthcare system is even free for all their citizens and is well designed in a way that, David, suits the efficiencies of the system. And so I think that we need to go back to the drawing board. We can put the blames on the doorsteps of these healthcare professionals because, I mean, we are scapegoating them. But there are deep-rooted issues that we need to tackle.
Do you say that scapegoating them?
Sometimes.
No,
sometimes.
In this particular instance.
In this particular instance, no. But I am talking about the whole general issue. This issue is just a part of thousands of cases. And that if we put adequate investments in our healthcare system, right? And I think that the time has come for us to look at how best we can be able to deliver, I mean, some form of free healthcare to our people. I commend the government for making a policy that seeks to address free primary healthcare to our citizens, which I think that it is very important because in medicine, the preventative aspect, right, is way cheaper than the curative aspect. And so if you have mechanisms in place to prevent diseases from happening, right, and to prevent a lot of your populations being unhealthy, then it saves you a lot when it comes to your health budget. So I think that we need to really act swiftly on how we are going to bridge the gap and solve the issues of inefficiencies within our healthcare space, we need to invest heavily in our infrastructure. This 111 district hospitals that was not completed, I think that the government should look at how best they can, indeed, if they don't have the money, bring in the private sector to join the government through a PPP facility so that they can be able to build these hospitals, manage and operate it, given certain thresholds of how they will charge the what do you call it, patients when they come to seek for medical attention. And indeed, the National Health Insurance Scheme, right, under the previous administration, you saw how it was capped, right, and that caused a whole lot of inefficiencies. Today, it has been uncapped, which I need to commend this government for. But indeed, we need to ensure that the monies, the process of the NHIS goes deep down to even solve most of these issues that we are talking about.
Right. Alhaji, one of the, or two of the recommendations includes the ensuring of compulsory triaging of all patients in state of emergency at any health facility, whether public or private, and also the call for a national emergency care fund, the establishment of this fund. But first, what do you make of the report?
Part of the report, the problem of the report is that it must be accessible and understood. Those of us who speak grassroots English, you are using very big triaging. What is triaging?
Giving first aid, so to speak.
Eh?
First aid, so to speak.
So come down, break this language down so that even those at the distance can peruse. But first and foremost, I need to send a message of condolence to the family of the bereaved for being subjected to these very traumatic situations. David, as Muslims, as Randy and my brother Udwishak said, when some of these unfortunate things happen, as a Muslim, sometimes what as a Muslim, what you do is, they said that we have a cardinal principle in Islam. In Islam, you say, "Kullu nafsi za'iqatul maut." Every soul shall taste of death. And also we say, "Kalu inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun." From Allah do we come and to Allah we go. So apart from the general acceptance, but in Islam, it also tells us that Allah Almighty does not change the condition of a people until they also take steps to do something about it. So you don't allow conditions that are oppressive, that are life-threatening to persist, and then you turn around and say, because it's so, it should be so. I don't know whether you appreciate what I'm saying. So in as much as we accept the general will, there must be some situations that must not be allowed to persist.
You answered my question, because what was lingering in my mind.
Yes, I know what you're thinking.
If you meet somebody dying, would you just say because it's
I get that kind of argument.
Yeah.
You see, because there is a bounden duty on you as a health professional to abide by certain ethics. I don't know of a doctor of a calling. Doctors who have been called. And before that, let me say without any iota of doubt that there are many hard-working, conscientious doctors and nurses in this country who give their precious time, energy, expertise to rescuing people from very difficult, otherwise life-threatening situations. They do it from the purity of their hearts. They give all the time and attention they can command. I've taken relatives to hospital. I have myself 1 or 2 times gone through hospitals and seen that sometimes you have no words but praise, and you wish you could do something even better for those doctors, nurses, paramedical staff who exhibit competent, conscientious work to save lives. So for them, life saving is a matter of crucial interest to them. They will spare no effort to give time, energy, and expertise to save those lives. So but there are also a few bad lots. There have been some places where even reports of some people go to duty in the night and they have a room where they have to go and sleep instead of looking at the patient. You understand what I mean? So there are still, notwithstanding this many conscientious, there are still a few bad laws. And it takes only just one bad law, David, sometimes to tarnish the image and reputation of a health institution. Because I ask myself fundamentally the question that if you are a very conscientious health professional, like I said, dedicated to saving life, and an ambulance arrives at the emergency with somebody, would you let them take the person away? Would it not be in the interest of all of you to get the patient in to see what can be done to save the life of the patient? So for a patient to be brought to an emergency and after some hour or two of haggling, hey, what has happened here, what do you do? And then they take the patient away. And it's the same health professionals who tell us that even 1 minute, 1 minute can make the difference between life and death. So if the person can stay 1 hour in and then eventually does not get admitted, is taken away again, to be driven to another point, maybe another 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever, when we have accepted that even 1 minute can make a difference between life and death. It's unconscionable. And so I cannot, I want to believe that there must be a standing regulation that any patient who is brought to a health facility at least can be seen at the emergency ward.
And in fact, that's one of the recommendations.
Yes,
that there should be
because
compulsory, and that's why I use the word triage.
Yes, you see, David,
compulsory.
David, like I said, even if you admit the person, I'm not saying that should be, and put the person on the floor to give that person quality treatment, David, the person can survive.
And in this instance, the report says if they had been given blood or even some infusion, they would have survived.
So I know there are situations where even they've given people blood sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
Alive. It's happened before.
And infusions.
So for instance, you can give that person blood infusion while the person is in the chair. Why do you send the person away? Assuming you are saying that your theater bed or something was occupied that you could not immediately at least admit the person and find some alternative for addressing the issue. If you cannot give him the full measure of healthcare that you have given otherwise, because you are constrained by some space somebody is occupying. But at least admit the person, even if it is on a chair, and administer the necessary treatment that you need to do. It can save the life of the person. That condemning the person to be sent back in the ambulance and taken away again. And I also want to believe that there are standards in medical care that when somebody is referred from another facility to a bigger facility, the presumption is that there's better healthcare at that bigger facility. That is better than where they are referring the person, and that is why the referral was made in the first place. So when the person comes, would there not be anybody of that comparable stature or degree to look at that person, at least as an emergency? So I find it difficult to see that in spite of all the existence of all these protocols, people will just be condemned to suffer the threat of death by being sent away from the facility that they were referred to. I fail to understand that. Anybody with a medical calling, with some modicum of decency in you, feeling in you that this is about human life, you should do something about it, will not send somebody away like that. And so that's why I think that we have to look again. We should review sometimes the work ethics of the DSS. I know that the medical profession, the Ghana Medical and Dental Council, as the oversight body for reviewing some of these ethics and practices and actions of medical personnel.
The GMA, they are not happy with the recommendations in the entire report. They think that their staff who has been fingered in the issue are being scapegoated.
You see,
and they don't even see reason why their names have been put out there.
I respectfully disagree if that's the case, because see, the GMA, Ghana Medical and Dental Council, is not a typical union. It's not a union. It's a professional body, and I can understand that they would want to fight for the interests of their members. But fighting for the interests of your members is not synonymous with accepting the denigration of ethics, your own ethics. I believe that the Ghana Medical and Dental Council holds dear some of these ethics that were, particularly with that of saving life. So if anybody is derelict in duty and as a result of something has done something that has contributed to the loss of life, how are you going to defend that? So that's what I'm saying, that they cannot behave as a typical union, where the union sometimes, whether you are right or not, before management, they must first fight to protect you before they have a philosophy that you must drive away the hyena before you come home and blame the goat. So, but I am saying that it is important that we look at this, and all of us should be motivated by the need to save lives and the lives of our people. You never know today. Yeah. Even as a daughter, you can be, a daughter can say he's going home. In the next minute, you return as a patient.
And he is the brother of a medical doctor. The sister is a medical doctor.
See? So that's what I'm saying, that even as a daughter yourself, you can be leaving your this in or wherever you are, going back home, and you return as a patient. Yeah. It can happen to anybody. So if you don't put the system right, so that any of us can have the requisite level of treatment, I'm sure that it will not bode well for us. David, I think that without sounding political, relative degree of resources have been made available. I'm sure that you know the Mahama case, this and that has come, and you mentioned part of it, to deal with, to pump more resources at the primary healthcare level. That is free primary healthcare program. David, that is one of the most important things that we need to do as a people. You see, most of the time we are doing curative rather than preventive care. And anybody in medical medicine will tell you, I don't want to advertise my medical ignorance. I'm not being in a hurry to do so. But anybody will tell you that if you pour more resources at the local level to do preventive health care, it is more cost effective. It is more results oriented. It is more in tune with the needs of our people than to wait for people to get disease and come visit the OPD on a daily basis. So this is where I salute the vision of His Excellency President Mahama in pouring more resources and declaring this free primary health care. This in putting more resources at the local level, so that we can protect the health needs of our people and prevent them from contracting diseases that are obviously even are avoidable. So that the primary health care level, we can do those things and prevent them from coming for referrals and other things that we are talking about here. And I think that for me is a very, very commendable act, and I think we should continue on that tangent.
Right. Okay. So we will see how that space, but for now they've been, I think they are going to face disciplinary actions. And for me, I want it cleared. I don't know what those disciplinary actions is. Normally, it should be the revocation of their licenses.
David, I like to this. I was going to say it when I was coming. In fact, yesterday, my days into town, we just went around Parliament there. Then I met some friends who stood there, and they were asking me a question. That this National Cathedral thing we have left there, what is the answer to that thing? And nothing is happening. They were saying that nothing is happening. And I said that, look, I think it's a very important matter we need to address. Especially so, David, if that space, we can take that space and put an international hospital of repute. Let's build a first-class well medical facility at that place. We have left the issue. I want to believe that something is being done, but the pace is slow. We need to accelerate the tempo of action on that project. Those who cause all those losses and others, and are still working free and doing this thing. We are allowing so many of this to be going on like that. I think we should accelerate the tempo. Government must take action again and decide what use we can put that important land for. For me, one of the things we can use to do, like I said, to build a hospital of international repute where we can use it to treat our people.
We must recover the funds.
Over $97 million. The crimes that have been committed must be, the tempo must be accelerated for people to answer.
Right.
And then action decision taken about what we do with that land.
Right.
Because this is prime land sitting in the center of Accra. That is not being answered. So David, as part of this, I would think that the emergencies, that they say if you don't know death, look at sleep.
Yeah. All right, we wait to see what happens in the space. I want to get a better understanding of the disciplinary actions that will be taken against them. Is it just revocation of their licenses? I don't think that will be enough for me. I obviously
this is a criminal case, so
I wouldn't think that's enough because life has been lost, and from the report, it could have been avoided. Right? Do we just take their licenses and let them
go? They'll be prosecuted. They'll be prosecuted.
They still have facilities. I'm sure you're aware.
Yes.
So this one, just over here, we are very tolerant to many issues.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you allow things go.
It's God who gives and God who takes.
But I think that we should take a second look at it.
All right, so let's look at our last issue for this morning. We want to take a look at youth unemployment. And the United Nations Development Program has warned that the rising youth unemployment is a serious national security issue that threatens Ghana's stability and has urged immediate action towards addressing the issue. We've been talking about this forever, but it looks like on the other side of the divide, government says they put in a lot of interventions or opportunities, especially for the young guys out there to enroll into employable spaces. Talk about the 1 million coders program and the rest. But at the back of that, those within that space also comes up, and this is a warning that the threats that you are currently facing, in fact it's a national security threat, is the fact that we're having rising youth unemployment in the country. Doc, I'll start with you on this one.
David, well, the fundamental issue here to start with is the orientation of our economy, and that has to be simply spelled out. If we are a country that imports most of the things that we consume, most of the things that we use, goods and services, then of course what you are doing is that you are exporting your jobs to other countries. And I mean, you are creating employment for people in other countries, and you are just an end consumer. We need to really rationalize our agenda to industrialize and to promote or propagate the agenda for import substitution. We have said time without number in the United Party, under the aegis of our great transformational plan, that there are a lot of potentials within each and every region in this country, and that the nation Ghana is rich and not poor. According to the IEA, we have a resource wealth of $12 trillion. $12 trillion, David. Can you imagine if we tap into the various resources that we have with our own technology and our own erudition and begin to tackle the international markets where competition is hefty? David, under the Great Transformational Plan, we propose 10 strategic anchor industries. And if you permit me to peruse through and just to give you
quickly, because
a gist of that, we believe that Ghana's economy can thrive under 10 strategic anchor industries that can be the panacea to the joblessness of our youth and also underemployed youth. We believe that today, if you look at the vehicles that we use in this country, most of it is imported into the country. Under the leadership of Alan Tremantin, when he was the Minister for Trade and Industry, he brought in 6 of the largest automotive, global automotive companies into Ghana. I'm talking about VW, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, right, Zonda, Suzuki, which were assembly vehicles here. And their collective capacity stood at 125,000 vehicles a year. They had the capacity to assemble 125,000 vehicles a year. You can imagine if we integrate our bauxite and aluminium into this industry. And that is why part of the strategic anchor industries that we hope that Ghana creates a robust aluminium and bauxite industry that can attract a lot of youth. Then we talk about the pharmaceutical industry. The global market for pharmaceutical products is about $1.48 trillion. We are saying that if we pump in money and support the private sector in this regard, we can create a lot of jobs in this sector. Then we look at the garments and the textiles. Today in the northern region, our women are cotton farmers. And we have abundance of cotton in the northern region. Today, Bangladesh earns about $30 billion each year due to the export of what? Textiles and garments. So why are we not tapping into this resource in the northern region to create a robust garment and textile industry so that we can export and indeed produce what we wear? On this table, I can bet that 90 or 80% of the textile that we are wearing here is imported into this country. Including what I'm even wearing. Even though it's in a Ghanaian form. David, then we move to the petrochemical industry. Today, let me thank and praise the CEO of Tema Oil Refinery, who has turned the fortunes of that company from a negative equity position to now a positive equity position. That today they are making profits. But I think that our petrochemical industry ought to be revamped. That we are a largely agrarian economy. Agriculture is the largest employer in this country. We need to support our agri sector with the petrochemical industry. And one of the byproducts of this industry is fertilizer. We import most of our fertilizers from Ukraine and Russia. And that's why under the aegis of the Russian-Ukraine war, we had issues of fertilizer supplies. Government ought to create the right policies to drive the private sector and put in some form of cushioning for banks to support investment in this sector. And we have said that the Western region should be the hub when it comes to petrochemicals in West Africa, not only in Ghana. Right. David, then we look at industrial salt. We know that Ghana, under the previous administration, had a project at Ada, led by Magdan, which was one of the largest salt mines. Electrochem. Electrochem in West Africa and even Africa. We think that, you know, salt is used for a lot of products, including pharmaceuticals, including even the petrochemical industry. Yeah. So I think that looking at the large coastal lines we have, and I mean, water resources, surface resources that we have, we can harvest a lot of salt to support the drive. If you look at the global market, it's about $15 billion. So you can imagine if we start up an industry that is into the industrial salt sector, we can rake in at least, even if we are getting $2-3 billion a year, it would save us a lot, and it would, I mean, employ a lot of our teeming youth. And then we look at the issues of vegetable oils, fats, and industrial starch. Right. We know that today starch is a base ingredient in the cosmetic industry, the pharmaceutical industry, right? Oil, we use vegetable oil in our foods every day, right? But we do not consume them. It is sad to know that Ghana helped Malaysia in their quest to become the largest exporter of what? Vegetable oils and oil palm in the world. Today, we are nowhere to be found in this space. So we need to go back to these industries, these 10 strategic anchor industries that I just highlighted this morning. Invest heavily and create that environment for the private sector to take charge of these industries so that it can be able to employ our teaming youth. But youth unemployment, even though it's high, is quite better than what we know previously.
Right.
From 14.7% to 13%.
I think that at the heart of this conversation around youth unemployment is got to do with human capital development. And the core of human capital development in itself is got to do with education and training. And for me, I think that we need to commend the government for understanding what it means to be discussing or having this conversation in the magnitude in which we have it, to the extent that bodies like the UN and Co are all concerned and bringing out research papers or whatever. And so for the government to have thought through this and brought in very brilliant programs. One, we have the AGEKUM program that is youth targeted. Secondly, we have the National Apprenticeship program that is also youth targeted. You see, in this country, when we talk about youth employment, we mainly focus on people who have gone through school but cannot get jobs to do. We do not talk about our unfortunate brothers and sisters who, for one reason or the other, could not pass through school to attain certificates. And it's not everybody who is unable to get a certificate that is dumb. They are very brilliant people, but one or two reasons could account for their inability to pass through school in order to be certificated. And so when you embrace all of these and you take it on board and you bring out such programs that would offer training, that would offer support, that would give skills of a sort to these people to be self-employed and in turn create jobs so that we can have that tripling effect. I think that we need to commend the government, and I think that if we are able to sustain such programs, at the end of the day, we may not be solving entirely, because this is an age-long program, an age-long problem. Youth unemployment is harder-headed. Not one single program can solve all of it, but we need to start from somewhere. And I think that is what the government is doing by coming out with such programs, so that at the end of the day, we could feel the effect and cut down on youth unemployment in this country.
Alright, take us on.
Yeah, David, you see, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think one of the decisions about our youth, and I've said it, that it's a ticking time bomb, which all of us, especially political actors, must wake up and address with all the concerns. And I'm happy that this government has made some effort. I am not about to say that it's a foolproof thing that will guarantee jobs for every youth and solve the unemployment problem. But like he's mentioned, some of the programs, National Apprenticeship Program, vocational training. And David, every year, if you check all our institutions, they turn out thousands, tens and thousands of graduates. Alai? Yeah. Where are they going? So the graduates of 2 years ago, the graduates of last year, and those who are going to graduate this year, all of them piling up. What does that constitute? So we need to have a decision to find out a national program, a revolution in a national program that will create employable people. David, there are some people who are just completely unemployable. You know that?
Yeah.
Because if you just turn out the read and write and regurgitate and pass exams and go out, that is going to give you more numbers of unemployable people. But we must begin to address the needs of the economy. And I'm happy. I just said that Ghana has moved to the 8th best economy in Africa with over $118 billion. Kudos to the finance minister. He's doing a lot of very good wonderful works, and I commend him for that. But we have a larger problem as a nation to deal with. We need to introduce into our curricula and others skills that can enable people when they graduate, David, to even themselves create jobs for young people and become employers themselves. We are not. Everybody is sitting down, and many people are lying on the former state structure to get jobs. I think we ought to look at that and refocus. David, it is the economy that will grow, especially the private sector they talk about and others, that will expand and be able to absorb more people in the creation of jobs. If you don't look at the key things that are inhibiting our economic growth, obviously we cannot create more jobs. David, you have a situation where even our mindset is an obstacle to the creation of jobs. And I've always said mindset, I will not be tired of saying it. I asked you a question the other time here, David, you ran away, you didn't answer the question. I asked you, David, if they brought you 1 bag of Vietnamese perfumed rice and then rice produced at Nyankpala in Tamale, which one will you choose?
For free.
Free, all of them free. You see, and that is the mindset of the typical Ghanaian, that the foreign product is better than the Ghanaian one. Even though nutritional wise, our nutritionists have told us that our rice is far better than this Polish rice. They have taken everything from the rice. It's just white, nothing. There's nothing in it. But the Ghanaian believes that the perfumed rice is better. So when you go to a function and they cook rice and they say this one is local rice and this, and the queue, you find a long queue at the perfumed rice. And this one where you walk freely and eat anytime you like. You see? So David, if we don't imbibe that value and begin to understand that our own produce is better, our own mackerel is better, our own fish is better, our own poultry is better, our own this thing is better, and begin to consume in larger numbers, this is how we can expand and grow our economy. And more importantly, take hold of the economy. Let the economy reflect in the lives of the people. If you cannot take control of your economy, forget it. You can get all the numbers and not be able to make a dent on unemployment. So it's very, very important, David, for us to be able to do this. I think some other supportive measure, government's policy of ensuring that there's value addition. Now we are no longer going to export raw material, raw shea nuts, raw cashew, raw all the raw raws. We must add value, David, and in value addition, you are now going to agribusiness. Agribusiness is going to create jobs. You are going to create jobs instead of just taking the shea nut and just throw the shea nut into the international market, and somebody would turn it into oil, turn it into butter, turn it into this, and at every turn, anything you turn into, you are creating jobs. So this is the job creation that I think President Mahama has indicated, and which this government must pursue seriously. Under the 24-hour economy, I believe that those are things to the Ministry of Agribusiness. These are things that they should focus more attention on. And I can tell you that if we are able to add value to this and take control of our economy, more and more of our youth will get jobs. Right. And then we'll make a significant dent on this unemployment problem. We are talking about farmer centers. You mentioned that it's not everybody who goes to school. More than 70% of our rural economy is agriculture or 80. Now, we can't do this benefit-oriented things that we are talking about with whole and cutlass agriculture. Yeah. We have to revolutionize our agriculture. So the issue of getting more combined harvesters, tractors, planters, all those other things is important. And that's why I salute the idea of a farmer service center, where all this machinery can be kept at a place within a district, and then from there they can interface with the farmers directly and do it for them at lower cost. You know, a lot of our peasant farmers don't have ready cash and money. And David, one other phenomenon is to ensure that after all this produce, the produce is marketed. There is market for it. It is distributed, and then there can be a consumption in the urban areas. Right. Today, as I speak to you, there's a lot of rice still locked up. Maize, soybeans. You know, so when these things are produced and they are not readily absorbed for the farmers to be able to get income and get their returns, it can be a disincentive to farming. Right. So I'm sure it's another area we need to look at, so that holistically, I'm sure that we can create more jobs and take control of our economy and make our youth unemployment in a huge dent in the youth employment. I have said that if we don't do that and get a lot of our youth to work, we are sitting on a time bomb.
Thank you so much, Alaji. Let's do one or two messages and then we'll be done. Alaji Bini Yuri Bushali. Bi Yuri Bushali.
It means where they like the goats.
Oh, okay. From
the goat is favored.
Okay, from Sabelugu, he says I should say good morning to you. Seidu Isaka says we should force the system to work. Most of our hospitals, the services are poor. Alaji comes back and says, good morning to my senior brother, Commander Alaji ABA Fusini and your panelists. I think President John Mahama reset agenda will be completed. May God bless President Mahama. Right. Nasir Mohammed says, good morning, Pan African TV. Most of our health professionals are very unprofessional. There are cases of many preventable deaths that we have seen in the system, and the same system covers their backs. All right, thank you so much. G.A. Malima says, all right, you say the panel today is top notch. Thank you for that. Bugli Suraj says, I would keep it up. Always doing your best for Mother Ghana. Those are Facebook messages. And lastly, on WhatsApp, Mutala from Salaga says, good morning, host and your panelists. I'm Mutala Salaga. Some of our health professionals are simply not ready to work, but looking for money. Unprofessional way is not enough. It's not about a bed or facility, but professional conduct and rudeness among the health professionals. Thank you so much, Mutala, for that. Good morning from Kuchu, Manshia Kumase. Please, we used to have our military support for doctors, engineers and others. If something like this is happening, they take over. Why? I don't get that. Okay, and then lastly, from Positive Change in Mandina, it says our concerns as citizens should be how smart President Mahama and his government is playing the game with tactics and adhering to all fiscal policy to keep the economy running without necessarily borrowing from the international market. With President Mahama, Ghana is in safe hands. Regards to Honorable Ibrahim Faila, MC of Medina. All right, thank you so much for that message. And lastly, from Masawood in Kumasi Bantama, it says, I will urge the good people of